waited there. And when the prince returned...
He found me instead, and we all know what happened to him then, don't we?
Yes, he agreed readily. You found that the little idiot had consented, and that she had been as guilty of bad judgment and weak nature as he was guilty of being a rake. So instead of killing him, you cursed him with a rather interesting facial deformity to teach him better manners.
Cade frowned, startled in spite of herself. She had never heard anyone tell the incident in that light. It was astonishingly close to her own point of view. And what does that tell you?
That you have a sense of justice, he assured her, still serious. I've told many stories of you, and it's one of the things about you that has always impressed me.
Cade considered him carefully. He evidently knew his danger and didn't shrink from it, though he hadn't exactly dared her to be rid of him. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken to her this way, with a simple, fearless acceptance. Cade found herself saying, "She didn't perish dramatically of heartbreak, you know. She killed herself." He shifted the pack on his shoulder and shook his head regretfully.
It's all the same in the end.
He looked up at her, his gaze sharp.
But I'm here now to tell the story of the Potter of Riversea who was murdered, and how you avenged her. I am Giles Verney, a balladeer.
The balladeer part she could have guessed, but she still wasn't sure what to make of this man. Surely he can't be simply what he seems, she thought. People were never what they seemed. Very well, Giles Verney. How did you know me?
There's a portrait of you in the manor at Islington. It's by Grianco, whom you must remember, as he was court artist when...
I remember, she interrupted him. The only other portrait of her had hung in the royal palace in Vienne, and was probably long destroyed. Grianco was a seventh son and had the unconscious ability to put a true representation of the soul of his subject into his work. Cade could weave glamour into an effective disguise, but hadn't bothered for the inhabitants of Riversea, who had never seen her before. You came here for the story of the dead potter. Giles looked toward the door of the cottage.
I was in Marbury and heard about it from the magistrate there.
He shook his head, his mouth set in a grim line.
It's a shocking thing to happen.
Maybe if I show him exactly how shocking it is, he'll go away, she thought. She said, "See for yourself." He followed her into the cottage with less hesitation than she would have expected, but stopped in the doorway. It was dark and cool, and flies buzzed in the damp, still air. The plaster walls were stained with dried blood, and the rough plank floor littered with the glazed pieces of the potter's last work, mixed with smashed furniture and tumbled cooking pots. After a quiet moment, he asked, "Do you know what did this?" She hesitated, but his story of the gentlewoman of Byre alone had brought him this answer. "Yes." Giles stepped forward, stooping to pick a piece of wooden comb out of the rubble. His face was deeply troubled.
Was it human?
I don't know, but you'd be surprised how often something like this is done by a man, despite the number of tales where giant hands come down chimneys. Cade rubbed the bridge of her nose. She was tired, and the whole long day had apparently been for nothing. She made her voice sharp, wanting to frighten him. "Now why don't you go away? This isn't a game, and I'm not known for my patience." He looked up at her, the death in the poor little room reflected in his eyes. As if it were the most self-evident thing in the world, he said patiently, "There has to be an end to the story, my lady." Stubborn idiot, if you are what you seem, Cade thought wearily. There might be no end. I've waited all day here, and all I caught was you, a human mayfly. His expression turned quizzical. "You're pretending to be another potter?" "Clever of you to notice." Cade regarded the thatched ceiling sourly. The inhabitants of Riversea knew her only as the potter's daughter, come from another village to see to her mother's body.